Do you reckon this is our most amazing story we've ever had on the podcast?
Oh, we keep mentioning, like, even we go to events and we're like, oh, and we interviewed this guest on a podcast and she was so bubbly and so full of life, and just her story. Yeah, I kind of forgot that I was supposed to be interviewing. I just kept listening, and then I was like,
You always do that.
ask questions when they're really good.
Yeah.
You just kind of like get engrossed in the story. But Sophia.
We actually first got in touch with her on Instagram, didn't we?
Oh,
Well, actually,
years
she
ago.
messaged us like years
Yeah.
ago, being like, love that you're trying to educate women about investing. I want to tell you a story, and we're not going to give it away because you have to listen to the whole episode.
Just give it a listen.
It's really good. It's the most, if you need any kind of inspiration as to why you should be investing from a young age, she was 16 when she started, this is the only motivation that you will ever need. Oh, welcome to the studio. This is actually the first time we've ever had someone from the Curve community in.
I love how you say welcome to the studio. Like,
Yeah,
Yeah.
you're right, actually. We are in Victoria Harris's sister's house in the children's room. This
Yeah.
is not exactly a studio.
Close enough, it
I went
works.
to move some stuff and one of the toys like set off and it was like, and I was like, oh my God, what is happening?
Thank you for bearing with us, Sophia. She gets in, she goes, wow, it's so good to see behind the scenes. And you're like,
Yeah.
oh, we're sorry about the behind the scenes.
BTS. Gosh.
Well, I thought it was fascinating. Finally got to see what it looks like from the other side. So I enjoyed it. And I'm very excited to be here with you too.
Well, so we first spoke to Sophia. You sent us a DM. This would have been like 2 years ago, I think.
Yeah.
I'm not going to give the story away. I'd love to hear it from you. But we were just like, if you need any kind of encouragement or reason to
Motivation. Yeah.
it would be
anything.
this story.
Basically, when I grew up, my dad had just retired from a career on Wall Street.
How old was he? Retiring.
Ooh, 35 maybe?
Oh, that's me retiring now. Thank you, Kiv.
Ah.
Amazing. Gosh.
But
yeah.
he basically left Wall Street because he didn't find it fulfilling. And so I was very lucky to grow up with him in the house with me. So I had two parents at home growing up. And
Gosh, that's so rare in itself, isn't
Yeah.
it? To have your mum and your dad around when you're a kid is like quite special.
And
I
how
know.
cool for your dad to be there
For
with you
sure.
growing up and not having to go to work, and same with your mum. Yeah, I feel like that's
yeah, no, pretty extraordinary circumstances. So I feel very, very, very grateful. But basically, he wanted to move overseas with our family when my sister and I were still young so we could experience a life outside of the US, because living there in California is very much a bubble and the rest of the world is not like that. So grew up in New Zealand for a couple of years. So we actually lived down outside of Nelson. So I would say that there was just a level of exposure to these topics and words growing up. But I always remember listening to my dad's business phone calls growing up.
cute.
And just, I think through that, you kind of hear these words and become familiar with topics and certain things that you kind of hold on to for a while. Especially as a kid, things really stick with you for a long time.
It's quite scary, and that's what I'm scared of being a parent. Like, kids pick up on everything.
You have to be
Like,
so careful.
you
When
swear once and then they're going around saying, yeah. You're like, oh gosh. Yeah, no,
Totally.
which is also why, if you're fighting,
You say a full sentence to her and she will go and do it. She understands what you're talking about.
Yeah.
And that's someone that can't even speak. So you think
Yeah.
about when they can then speak, how much they must be absorbing.
totally.
It's like,
Totally.
I remember because she whatever, and she'll just go, you're like, oh my
You do know what I'm
Wow.
saying.
Yeah.
You know exactly what's going on. And so to think from the age of, day dot, you heard conversations about investing and the way in which it's impacted not only your life and your financial situation, but also your career and everything is so cool. So you got to, forgive me if I get the age wrong, but you got to about 15 and asked for something in particular for your birthday. Can you tell everybody listening what you asked for and then how that eventuated into being something that you now still have?
Totally. So to properly tell this story, I need to go back until I was about 10 years old.
I just love that we're getting all the whole
I know,
context.
yeah.
You got to have
So
appropriate context for
Yes.
this. So when I was 10 years old, I was obviously growing up in the Bay Area, and that is a hub of tech and finance and a lot of things. And, you know, about an hour south from where I was growing up in Berkeley, there was the Tesla plant. So the first Tesla plant ever was in the South Bay in Fremont. And I remember, you know, driving home from school some days and like seeing a Tesla. And this is like, these are like the first Teslas that like ever rolled off.
I even love how you say Tesla. I'm like, you say it so much nicer. So it makes it sound so much more luxurious.
Tesla.
Tesla. Yeah.
I've never
I do
been
think-
complimented with that before, but that's
No,
great.
the New Zealand accent does make things sound a little bit more bogan than they are.
Tesla.
Yeah.
I've got a Tesla, you know.
I
It's
go to
like-
the toilet.
Yeah.
Do you know why? It's because when you guys say Tesla, you say it with a Z or Z.
Tesla.
Oh, we do.
Tesla. Instead of
Tesla.
Tesla.
It's Tesla.
Oh my gosh.
Have you got a Tesla? Oh, okay. I'm going to work
I'm
on
going
that
to
in my
drive
own
the
time.
Tesla. Yeah.
I actually haven't. Oh my God. I nearly gave it away. Okay.
So I was obsessed with them. From like the second I first saw Teslas, I loved them. I was like, I want one day. I'm going to make it happen. I'm not sure how. I'm 10 years old, but one day I'm going to own a Tesla.
Did you know that it was an electric vehicle? Did you understand the concept of like it's not driven by petrol, it's driven by batteries, and you know, like did you get that? Or
Yes.
yeah.
So that was
okay.
actually one of the things that
Okay.
I loved about it was the fact that it was innovative technology, you know, electric cars. I remember seeing the Tesla Roadsters as well, which were just like the sportiest looking, coolest cars I'd ever seen in my whole life. And I'm not even really a car person, so I don't know why I just gravitated towards them so much, but love them. So I always knew that I was going to own a Tesla one way or another.
Also, just the confidence there
I
is
know.
just
Yeah.
stunning. I could really use a bit of that.
Yeah.
I'm going to do this one day. You know,
Yeah.
kids are so.
They don't see the barriers.
Yeah.
They're quite ambitious in terms of, I guess they just dream big.
It's
Yeah.
like you
Yeah.
haven't
And
been
it's kind of
bruised
sad
by
that we
the world
lose
or
that
something.
as
Yeah.
an adult.
Yeah.
That we're not as ambitious, or we don't have that same sense of
There's no fear.
naivete, you know.
Yeah.
That,
It's like skiing. When you're a kid, you just go straight down the mountain and then probably bail. Like you don't have that fear. Whereas an adult, you're like,
yeah,
going
there's like-
slowly down, like a snail.
Can I just tell you a really terrible ski accident that happened to me when I was 10, just for context? This is like, I decided I'd like to be a freestyle skier, which was never, ever going to be in my path. But I had a helmet on. I'll just preface this story.
Yeah.
I decided I wanted to try a rail. So I did like the sideways thing with 2 skis, by the way, quite difficult. And they kind of got confused and separated. And then like I flipped up and landed on my head on the
bar.
rail.
Oh my
and
God.
like sort of crumbled down. And I just remember there was all these people on the chairlift cracking up at me. But then also like, oh shit. But I had to be like banana boated down the mountain. Like I remember vomiting into the neck brace I had, and I had to be helicoptered to hospital to get my neck. It was so...
did you ever ski again after
Yeah.
that?
Yeah, I skied, but I won't go near a hill or a
Okay.
bump or a rail.
enough.
I'm just like, absolutely not.
I'm impressed. I don't think I'd ever get on skis ever again.
I mean,
if
I
that was me.
didn't
Yeah,
actually
yeah.
break my neck, just to preface. They thought I might have. But anyway, the point is, I was like, I'll do the rail. Whereas
Yeah.
now I've kind of got this, oh no, I'm going to be quite careful of this.
Yeah. I don't need to try that. I'm fine just going
Yeah,
down.
yeah,
slope.
yeah. Whereas I think when you're younger, you're right. There's like a fearless, I can do anything. I can
Yeah.
get what I want, which I think we need to try and bring
Instill.
back, actually.
Yeah.
I agree.
I agree.
100%.
So you were 10.
Sorry, we digress.
I'm just trying to remember where I left off. So
Yes.
I knew I wanted a Tesla one day, and I was going to make it happen. And fast forward a couple years, and often in the US, which I'm assuming it's similar here, 16th birthdays are usually pretty big.
Sweet
So
16.
sweet
Super
16.
sweet 16.
Yeah, exactly.
Do you remember that MTV show?
Yes.
Yes.
And they were like,
Yes.
come outside, we've got a surprise. It's like, well, it's obviously a car. And they go out and they're like, oh my gosh. And it's like, MTV's there and it's your 16th. You're getting a car, you know.
Yeah. So shocking.
Yeah.
So my 16th birthday rolls around, and my parents asked me what I want. And I said that I wanted Tesla shares. They bought me 16 shares of Tesla.
Oh, because you were 16.
So I was 16.
Oh,
and
love
they bought it with the intention that one day, obviously, the shares would go up and not necessarily buy a car, but have some starting money to use in an investment
Genius.
later on in
Yeah.
life.
How
I
old are
think
you, by
Vic's
the
doing
way?
a little bit of calculations
Yeah.
over there, which I'm so
How
into.
old am I?
How old?
25.
25.
So this would have been
17, 18, 19,
2014.
21,
19 years ago? No.
9 years ago, babe.
9. Sorry. Wow.
Don't take offense to that. She's
No.
not thinking that you're
It's all right.
20. No, don't worry.
It's all right. So that was kind of what happened is I got these Tesla shares and
Did you check them at your 17th birthday? Did you kind of get them and forget about them?
to be completely honest, I kind of forgot about them.
Yeah.
Because it was at a time when, they were pretty volatile, not going up an extreme amount. Tesla was still kind of in its infancy in some rate. So kind of forgot about them a little bit.
And I guess even that in itself's great. It's not like you got them and you're checking them every day and wondering what was going on. There was an element of got them, put
Hold
them
on to
aside.
them, long-term investment. I'll check them in a couple years from now. So essentially,
Vic's having trouble with the calculation. She's looking at me with a real confused face.
so I think it would have been August 25th because I'm born in September 1998
Wow.
So they were $100 a share.
when they were purchased. So it was about $1,600 US.
Great present.
Original
Yeah.
investment.
Okay.
So they were gifted to you when they were $100 a share. The share price is now $200 a share, but that's been split so many times that it's the equivalent of you getting your shares when you were 16 they were $16 each share. So your $16 shares have now gone to $200 a share.
Yeah.
Whoa.
I can't
What is
even
that
calculate.
percentage?
I knew you were going to ask that.
But like a lot.
That's just like
A lot.
multiple times.
Yeah.
It's when so Vic, I remember when you first told me about the 100 bagger, which I would like to maybe rename because it sounds really lame, but the idea that a share goes up by 100% and that's kind of the goal. And it doesn't happen very often. And when it does, it's exciting. You've had like a 700 bagger.
No, 100 bagger is not 100%.
Oh.
That's a one bagger because you're just doubling it once. 100 bagger is when you double it 100 times.
Oh, well, this is probably a 100 bagger then, really, isn't it? Maybe this is
It is.
12 bagger.
a 12 bagger. Who the fuck is getting a 100 bagger?
Yeah.
As if that's like
That's over like generations.
Okay.
Or like, yeah. Oh, it could be.
Probably
yeah.
a little bit longer than 7 years or
So
whatever it was.
it's pretty much gone up 13 times. It's increased itself 13 times.
100% 13 times.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Wild.
pretty extraordinary when you think about it. Especially because Tesla, when, my parents purchased it for me, was very volatile. It was a young company. Didn't actually produce that many cars by that point. So it was a very risky gamble. And so I essentially forgot about it for quite a few years.
Did they, when you asked for them, did they say, do you want something that's like less volatile? Is there a different share you might be interested in? I mean, did they question it or talk to you about the fact that it's a risky investment?
No, I think they knew that it was either Tesla or the highway
Yeah.
for me, just because of my personal investment in how much I loved the company and the product.
I also think back in the day, like I know $1,600 was a lot back then, but I think it's also, if it hadn't done so well, would also have been a really good learning experience. Do you know what I mean?
sure.
I think it's more,
Exactly. And I just got really lucky that
yeah.
I got good return on it.
Yeah. And this is what we say, like if you'd held those shares for even 4 years, they would have still been the same price.
Yeah. So it was
really
the
last-
same price for a very long time. Like
Yeah.
that's why I kind of gave up monitoring it because I'm like,
Yeah.
chances are, unless something crazy happens, it's kind of just gonna.
So so you've had them for 9 years. The first 4 years they did pretty much nothing.
Yeah.
And the last 5 years they've gone bananas.
Yeah.
So have you still got any invested? Can you walk us through the decision of like, what have you done since then with those
Yeah.
shares?
So since then, I cashed out some of those shares. I think it was about 48 of them, if I remember correctly.
God.
And I had just enough money to purchase my very own Tesla Model 3.
I would love if you just said you got a Honda or something.
Sorry. I've got a Honda just for context.
That would be like practically illegal to use Tesla shares to buy anything but a Tesla, you know? Like you just have to do that.
I feel like Elon Musk would come after you.
Yeah.
He'd know some kind of, I don't know, satellite AI technology.
He would know.
He'd be like,
know. He's probably spying on me anyways in my car, so, you know.
It's so exciting.
Honestly,
how cool.
I think it was one of the proudest days of my life when I realized that I actually had enough money in the investment account to pay for a car.
And how long ago did you buy your Tesla?
The process for buying a Tesla is basically you order it online, which in itself is kind of crazy when you think about it.
So how old were you when you were ordering this?
Oh, 23?
23. Imagine at 23 logging on into the Tesla website and ordering a car.
I did that.
What?
Yeah. You had to put down $1,000 US
Yeah.
and to be on the wait list. And I was like, it was refundable. If you put your name down, you paid $1,000 US, and it was like, we'll get in touch with you when it's ready. And I remember this. I was working at Milford at the time, and there was so much hype about Tesla, and it was like, oh my God, this is going to be revolutionary. It's going to be everyone was like, well, you may as well just put your name down. If you get to the point where they're like, we've got your car ready, you can be like, actually, I don't want it anymore. And you get your money back.
Holy shit. And
then I think it was like 5 years later or something. It was kept getting delayed and delayed and delayed. And they called me and they were like, your car's ready. And the price had gone up like massively. And I was like, well, I can't afford it now.
Double. And you're like,
I was like, that's
maybe
not fair. I was like, I can't afford it. I asked my dad, I was like, do you want to take my position in the queue, you know, and just pay me? And he was kind of like, I can't afford it either. And it was just a case of, it was reluctancy. I was like,
I could never drive a gas car ever again. Ever.
Yeah.
Mostly because the Tesla drives itself and I forget how to drive any other car. I drive my mom's car and I like forget to put it in park because the Tesla does it automatically. And it's like rolling back.
I read Elon Musk's book over summer, and it's quite funny, all the little quirkisms that he's put in the car, like the fart sounds. Yeah. I was like, oh, this is hilarious. Funny. And like my niece and nephew find it so funny.
Oh my God, because I was in your sister's and I was like, do you ever use it? And your sister did the fart noise and she was like, they love it.
They honestly, if they're like crying or screaming, she just puts the fart noise
and you can choose whose seat is making the fart noise too.
Yeah, like
so
it'll be like.
There's been a couple times I've surprised people with that trick.
They get back in the car after getting some groceries and it's just like, oh my God, I can't even do a fart.
Yeah. So basically forgot about the shares for quite a while. And then when I was in one of my finance classes, my professor offhand was talking about, recent investment news. And he said, oh, by the way, Tesla has a stock split. I think this was maybe 2020 and it was a 5-to-1 stock split. And I said, oh.
For anyone who doesn't know what that is. So that's when the Tesla shares were split. So for every one share that you owned, you now own 5, but the price is reduced. So the overall amount that you've invested doesn't change. So you still have, say if you had $1,000 of Tesla shares before the stock split, you'd still have that amount. It's just the makeup in terms of the price and the number of shares.
So would an example, a non-finance example be, there's lime key pie and you could either have...
Sorry?
Just give me a second and getting there.
Lime key pie.
It's an American dish,
key
isn't
lime
it?
pie?
Oh my goodness.
What did I call it?
Lime key pie.
What was it called?
Key lime pie. I mean, close enough. You just mixed up.
Whatever. You knew
I
what I
love
meant.
that you're trying to be relevant for the American in the room and you just really butchered
Honestly,
it.
I've never even had key lime pie, so probably the wrong
Say
audience.
there's a hot dog.
Okay, there's a hot dog. No, that doesn't work. So, okay, say there's
How about apple pie?
Okay, there's an apple pie. So there's an apple pie you can get a mini one. You buy a mini one, or they might say to you, hey, you're going to get the same amount of pie, but can we give you this slice out of this bigger pie instead? It's like you've got the same amount of mouthfuls of pie. It's just in a slightly different format. Does that work?
You could just say, hey, we can give you one big slice, or we can give you 2 slices that are the same size as the big slice. It's just cut in half.
Oh, that's way easier.
Yeah.
That's basically what it is. So it's basically one big slice of pie cut into 5.
Got it.
Yeah. So it's the same amount of pie. You're not any better or worse off. It's just cut up differently.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's what happened.
So I was like, oh, wait, I have Tesla stock. I should probably see how many shares I have now. So I log in, and sure enough, after the stock split, I went from having 16 shares to 16 times 5. Is that 80? 80.
Wow.
Yeah.
But essentially, I went from having, a relative amount of stocks to quite a few. And obviously, the price of each individual stock dropped relative to how much of that piece of the pie it was. But suddenly I was like, wow, I have quite a few Tesla shares now. Maybe one day, my dream of owning a Tesla really isn't that far off. But of course, like the stock split didn't necessarily mean that the stock price went up at all. So it was still kind of average
But that's
price.
like, you talk a lot about stock splits being a really good green flag for a company.
Yeah, because it does mean that usually companies will do a stock split because their share price has done so well. They want to make it more accessible to more people. So they're like, hey, let's split our stock. So instead of $200 a share, it's $100 a share. So now people can buy it. So, and because they do it when the share price is doing well, usually that means the company's doing well. Therefore, it's kind of considered a green flag, but also means more people can buy it. So there's more demand. So it kind of all feeds into the same thing around it being a good indicator. So yes, you would have had more shares. They wouldn't have been worth any more, but probably the repercussions of that meant the share price will go up because of increased demand and the like. So
Yep.
yeah.
And so kind of kept an eye on it. After kind of knowing about the stock split, I definitely had it more on my radar as I was doing uni and going about my life than the previous past couple of years. And obviously, I think it was end of September, beginning of October 2021 that the stock price just shot up. It was crazy. Within a span of a couple of weeks,
it went from, to the beginning of 2020, it was roughly $20. And yeah, in the space of a year, it went from about $20 to $280.
Yeah. So it was pretty extraordinary increase.
At what point? I mean, it's good to see in hindsight, but I don't think I'd be able to sit there and not be tempted to react, not be tempted to sell, or if a stock doubles, if it goes from $20 to $40, I'd be like, oh, amazing, I'm going to sell it. Or, like there'd be that mentality of I want to take some profits or, lock it in rather than seeing it go up and up and up and up, because I get scared, oh, it might come down and down and down and down again. So how do you manage that self-control?
To be honest, I was kind of just too busy to worry about what to do with that money.
Yeah.
I was in uni. I would probably have just spent it on partying in college. So I didn't really have anything to do with that money. So it didn't really make sense for me to pull it out at the time. And I just kind of thought, hey, look, I'll hold on to it and see how much it's going to increase. Like what can go wrong, essentially. And so I basically held on to it as it's going up, 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 and up. And one day I just decided, oh my God, I actually have enough money to buy a car. And I don't even have to use all my Tesla stock. I have more than I need. And at that point, I was living in New Zealand. And I remember sitting in this cafe in Nelson and looking at my stock price, or the current stock price, looking online at the Tesla app and seeing how much in real time it would cost to order and buy a car, doing a quick little calculation and saying, oh my God, I have enough money. And so I can remember that moment so vividly because it was just one of those moments where it doesn't really feel real. You're like, wait, is this actually happening? Can I really do this? And I basically called Tesla and placed an order.
Oh my God. How cool that sense of achievement. Yeah, I feel like that must be so amazing when you want something so bad and then you finally get it. That sense of accomplishment. Yeah, it's just like, I'm surprised you can still remember that. I'm not surprised you can still remember that feeling because it's
it really is a once in a lifetime feeling. Yeah. It's just like one of your dreams are coming true and you never thought
decision. You believed in Tesla. You understood the product. You wanted a car. It's like kind of a perfect recipe for everything that Vic has ever tried to teach in real time, you know, because I don't think there's that many people that would have left their shares in for that long.
I think that's also a big learning, is that there would have been people that after 4 years would have been like, screw this, my shares have done nothing, and would be absolutely kicking themselves now. Do you know? And I think there's that whole, I think starting young as well, 9 years doesn't seem like that long, you know, like now it's like, oh my gosh, 9 years time, that seems like ages away. But
when you're like 17 years old, like it's really not what you're worrying about. There's much higher priorities in your day-to-day worries. But honestly, I'm so grateful that I chose not to do anything, because I never could have done this if I had taken the money out. And for me, I think that's really also hit home the importance of never touching investments and investing for the long term and just letting it do its thing. It might go up, it might go down in the short term, but not touching it is so important.
There was a few people that when we shared your story were like, oh, she sold her shares to buy a depreciating asset. So an asset that's going to go down in value.
I forgot about that. We did get a bit of hate on it, actually.
And I was like, oh, for God.
I mean, sorry, we need to preface. Most people were like,
oh, totally.
This girl is amazing. How did she do it? Like, it was so positive. I think it was honestly one of our first viral posts. We were like, whoa, everyone's sharing the story around how cool. And everyone was so inspired by it. But there were people who said that. I totally forgot.
And I totally get, like, let her bathe in the moment.
I'm still unfazed by that, because in the end of the day, I'm the one that got the free car. So
but I also think it's like your goal was to own a Tesla, and that was your sole goal, and you'd had that from such a young age. So I think the fact that it was Tesla shares, put that aside, the fact that you had invested and that had grown to help you achieve your goal. That's all we're doing with investing, is we are investing for a goal, for an outcome, whether it's to have enough money to retire, whether it is to buy a house, whether it is to pay for a wedding, whatever it is, there's always some kind of goal in mind when it comes to investing, because it helps us be motivated and all of that. And I think, the fact that you were motivated to have enough to buy your own Tesla is like, it doesn't matter what you buy with it, you know, like,
exactly. And I think the best part is that I still have quite a few shares left over. So, you know, it's a net positive for me. And to be completely honest, the joy that my car has brought me over the past, I guess, almost 3 years is worth every penny. Even if I could sell it for $0 and it would still be worth it, and I would still go do it all over again.
And that's another amazing lesson, I think. 2 of them, like the idea of setting a goal when you get to it, being happy, not being like, I want more, and feeling like it's this never-ending pit. Because I do think with money and investing, there is a level of, well, what is enough? What is enough for you? What are your standards? Where do you want to get to? And everyone's are different. And for you, yours was owning a Tesla, and you got there and you were satisfied and you're so happy with that decision. And and for someone else, maybe it does seem silly and frivolous to buy a car with that money, but not to you, and that's not their money, so who really cares?
And it's like everyone's different.
And I think another thing too is, you know, I'm not buying a house right now. I don't have crazy life expenses beyond my rent and food and whatnot. I don't really need the money at the moment. I might as well use it for fun. Like if you talk to a financial advisor, maybe not the wisest choice, but I'm totally okay worked out. And I'm so, so grateful for it every single day.
Even if you'd invested in something that hadn't done well, you know, something that you'd liked, if it was Disney or if it was Nike or something, you know, like something at a young age, a brand that you knew, like even just learning that investing mentality would have set you up so well. And like, yes, there might be parents listening being like, oh gosh, I can't afford that much in shares for my daughter or my son or whatever. Like that's absolutely fine. But even just buying them as much as you can, or
$10 of a share.
$10 of a share, yeah, $10 of a Tesla share, or anything is going to start that conversation, and they're going to start seeing it go up and down, and they might wake up in 9 years' time and have a lot of money to play with. So
magic has happened.
Yeah.
No, exactly. And I think honestly, even if Tesla stock plummeted and I would have lost that initial investment, I still would have learned a lot. You know, I would still be grateful for the opportunity and for the learning, because ultimately that's one of the biggest things to come out of this experience is the learning.
Do you think you would have gone back for round 2 of a big investment like that if it hadn't gone well? Because I know there are a lot of people who have invested, their first experience wasn't great and so they're put off, or they've heard really bad experiences from grandparents or friends or family or whatever. Do you think that you understood investing enough for that to not put you off? And I guess like what kind of thoughts would you have for people who have done that?
As Vic said earlier, it's all about diversification.
Yeah.
So I would not have put it all in one stock. Obviously, I would have done my research and, you know, done multiple different sectors and probably thought a little bit more about the asset allocation than just putting everything into Tesla. But I think investing is so important that even if, you know, it doesn't work out on the first try, ultimately over your lifetime, it's going to be a net positive, I think. So it is incredibly important.
Is there anything, you've listened to the curve and you know the sorts of things that Vic talks about. Is there any like strategies or things that you think you could share knowledge-wise with those who maybe haven't learned a lot about investing, even if it's just really small little things you've learned along the way?
A couple things. First, I would say
everyone.
I mean, to be fair, it was key lime pie. Like that was totally out of left field. So I don't know where you were going with that.
Sorry. Okay, fine. But the point is that anybody can learn how to invest. This is not an exclusive language.
Absolutely.
Why do you think New Zealand is so far behind? Like, what is the culture like in the States when it comes to investing? Do a lot of your friends back home invest?
Yeah, so that's a slightly more difficult question because so much of that depends on your education level and your income. And obviously in the US, there's a large social stratification in terms of financial literacy. And a lot of my friends invest, but obviously they mostly have university level educations. They come from families that are, pretty well off. And so they've had access to that learning and education, whereas, it's a lot more difficult for some people to get that same information if it's not talked about in your family or already kind of spoken about in your community. But I think it's been really interesting coming from a place, and obviously I have a degree in finance. I went to university, I studied these things. So my understanding of these concepts is a little bit more than the average person. But it's been really interesting coming from the US to New Zealand, where everything here is about investing in property and not the stock market. So there's a whole gap of knowledge for a lot of people, which is, I'm sure, similar to, the US in some ways. But it's really interesting that people know exactly, when to buy a house and how to do it and house prices. But when you ask them about investing in anything other than their KiwiSaver, that it's like a blank to them. And it's really interesting. I have a flatmate who allowed me to actually share this story. She is a doctor, her final year of medical school. She's incredibly smart. And she got a lump sum payment for her yearly salary, essentially. And she came home one day and she's like, oh my God, I have no idea what to do with this lump sum payment I got. Like, I don't even know where to start. And it was really interesting for me because she is so smart, has been at university for the past 8 years, and she didn't know what to do with that. And so I said, okay, I'm assigning you some homework. Read this.
Come into my office.
Read this. And this will be the first step in the right direction in terms of figuring out what to do with that money.
But it's interesting you say that, because she would be so clued up in her field as you are very clued up in your field. And it's so true. It's like, just because you're smart at one thing or good at one thing doesn't necessarily mean you're good at another. And it's like just realizing, like, even when I talk to lawyers, I'm like, can you just explain it in normal terms? Like, I now know how frustrating it is when the finance industry talks to someone from the non-finance industry and talks in jargon and is trying to make it confusing. It's like, you don't need to explain it like that. Why can't you?
Even like I got an email the other day from someone that's helping us with website stuff. And honestly, I reckon 3 words in this giant email I understood.
Yeah.
To the point where I actually replied and I said, I'm so sorry. Like, this is a whole nother language for me.
Yeah.
Don't know what you're talking about. And I just had to be honest, because I was like, I don't know what any of these things
something
are.
or say, yeah,
like,
cool.
What is
like,
that?
yeah.
But I think it's just, I think it's up to both people to try and explain things in a way that makes sense, but also don't be afraid to ask a question.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And good on your flatmate for even feeling comfortable enough to come and say to you, hey, I'm in this situation. I don't really know what to do, but I know I don't have the information or the education to make a good decision. What do you think?
Yeah.
Or where can I go to look for more info?
Yeah.
Also, I hope you sent her the Curve podcast.
Oh, yes. Don't worry. She follows you guys.
Thank you. Yeah. Love that.
Firstly, Sophia, before we say goodbye, would just like to say thank you for sharing your story with us on Instagram. I remember when you sent it, and I think I sent like capitals with heaps of emojis, just being like, oh my God.
Amazing. And there was like a picture of you next to your car. And I was like,
we should actually get some photos in front of the car. The tizzy.
I did bring it.
Oh,
yes.
amazing.
I mean, I had to,
No,
we're just sitting there and had some fart noises.
No, but it's like I hope people listening feel inspired and excited, and I'm sure that they will, because I definitely did. Yes. And we'd love to get you on again. / if you ever leave your job and the Curve can afford to pay you, I feel like you'd be a great employee.
Gosh,
I hope my boss isn't listening to that.
Yeah.
But maybe good leverage for a pay rise, you know?
And if you ever want to sell your Tesla Yeah. We're also here
Okay,
too.
I know that you guys have first dibs.
Yeah. Perfect.
Got it.
Perfect.